So today we're going to be using Unreal Engine 5.0.3. You should have the project downloaded and opened and ready to go. So I'm going to screen share. We'll get right into it. Great. So when you open the project, does everyone have that going to follow along? More or less? All right. When you open the project, you're going to see our building here, the Creativity Commons. Navigating in Unreal is pretty easy. Right click looks around, left click looks around, right click WASD to zoom, Q is down, E is up. I have preloaded this scene with an asset that is free this month on the Unreal Engine Digital Marketplace. To access the content where that asset is stored, you will hit Control and space, pops open the bottom drawer, and this is called the Dynamic Volumetric Sky. We're going to, it's already in here so that it would compile shaders before this started. Compiling shaders within Unreal Engine takes a considerable amount of time because it's using full processing power of your GPU and CPU to create these beautiful scenes. On your own time, though, if you wanted to add the dynamic volumetric sky to your scene, you would select this BP, dynamic volumetric sky, and drag it into the scene. I'm not going to do that, but that's how you would do it, and that's how I did it here. If at any point in this your computer starts to slow down, you can hit Control R, and you'll see up here it says real time off, and you get a different quality of light, but it is much less taxing on your processor. See, real time, not real time, but that helps with performance. I want to go over the different types of light. With this exterior scene, we're going to start by turning off the dynamic volumetric sky, turning off the directional light, turning off the point light, and turning off the spotlight. This is what you'll see when you create a new level in Unreal Engine. Nothing. Without light, you can't see things. They still exist there. There's still the Creativity Commons, but it's not lit. So the first form of light for lighting the entire scene when you start a new level is the directional light. To add a directional light, you're going to come up here, click on the box with the plus. In this place is where all of your stuff is to add in. This is similar to like in Blender. If you hit Shift A, this is that same menu, but with Unreal Engine. So we're going to go and we're going to hit directional light, and it adds it to the scene. Now you can see when it adds it to the scene, straight down, and there's no rotation on it. Looks kind of weird, right? So to make it look a little more normal, you're gonna hit E, get your rotating gimbal going, and then move it into place by rotating around. This is the most basic form of lighting your entire scene. Just one light, super easy on processing, supported in VR, the whole deal. The light pops up here, looks pretty washed out, right? So to lower the intensity, you're going to navigate over to the details panel, scroll down to where it says intensity, and we're at 10. Let's go ahead and try 5. That's a little better. 1. 1's looking okay. And changing the color, you can do by selecting this light color box here and changing the color. Groovy. Gonna go with a little bit of a amber peachy color. Now we've got this scene. We've got this light in the scene that pops up. If you ever want to hide that, if you hit G, it turns into game mode and hides all of the cones, lights, auxiliary features. So going to go ahead and delete that, turn back on the original light. And now we're going to zoom into the building. So go to the front door and keep going. Cool. Now we are in this atrium area. Gonna adjust the ground here a bit so we have concrete because it is indoors. And same thing here. If you turn off the directional light, the scene goes black. If you're working on an interior atrium scene, there's a few other types of light that we can add in. So directional was the first choice. The next is point. So we're going to come over, turn on the point light, and see how that illuminates the space. Again, pretty low on resources here. You know, it doesn't use very many resources. But if you push G so you can see again, select the point, W. As you move that around, watch the shadows. If you want it up top, the shadows go down. If you want it from the bottom, the shadows go up. As you're placing these within your scene, you want to consider attenuation radius, intensity, and making sure there's not overlap between lights to maintain performance throughout your scene. Those settings can be found down here. Intensity, we're currently at an 8. Bring that down to a 1. You can see it's much dimmer. And then up to a 10, brighter. If I bring this attenuation radius, you can see the area that it reaches out to grows and decreases. You want it to cover the area and not much more than that. So outside, we can't see here. Inside, we can. And that helps save on performance when you're doing gameplay. Same thing with changing colors in here as well. If we were to do this lit as if it really is with point lights, we want to take the point light, bring the attenuation radius down, and place a few lights throughout the mezzanine levels. Even there, it's too bright, too bright. Try maybe a 1.1. So now we got there. To add multiple, you with W push so your gimbal is arrows. You're going to hold Alt, click on the arrow, and drag out, and repeat a few times. You got a set of 4 there. Grab all 4, Alt and click. Alt and click again. Alt and click again. So now we have a nice array of lights over there. If you wanted to change an individual light, you can do that. If you want to change all of the lights, go up to your outliner, select all of those, and you can change those as a group. Now, point lights, as you can tell, kind of look a little inaccurate to what we're seeing over here. Right now, we've got light up on the ceiling. We've got these weird circles on the wall. It doesn't quite truly represent what that light fixture is. And that's because those are not point lights in real life. Point light is an orb that will emit light in all directions. And with the balconies here, they're ceiling fixtures that are pointed down. This type of light, I'm gonna go ahead and hit H to hide that and create a folder so we don't lose those. Point light walls. That type of light, next one on the list is a spotlight. So I'll turn the spotlight on. And when you first drag a spotlight in, it's going to be facing down. So that's sometimes confuses me. Point straight down. And you get a different effect with this. You're not getting the entire room. You're just getting the area that it's pointing to. You're just getting the cone of that light. And if you put that in the balcony there, in the mezzanine area, that looks more like how our light fixtures are out in the space. There are a few parameters that we can adjust with these. Bring it back into the main space so we can see the cone better. There it is. So you'll see the blue lines that define where that light is. That is called the, it's right here, outer cone angle. And if you click in that box and drag the slider in, you're going to narrow it. Drag it all the way out, you're going to get 90 degrees. It's like a half, 80 degrees, like a half point light. So you don't get the ceiling aside from the bouncing light. You get the direct light in one direction only. True fixtures are going to be at 50, 26, 10 for a spot, 5 for a super pin spot if you just want to accent one section, and 36 for a mid throw. Those are the most common within theatrical lighting. Those are the lenses you'll find on Lecos. So I'm looking out there right now. That looks like it's probably a 50. If we look at the off-screen light on the wall there as a sample, drag it into place, and that light is also much warmer than this cool light. So we're going to add some saturation here, and we're going to move more towards the warm direction. Maybe there. You can also see here now this cone goes all the way down, all the way around there. I'm going to show you. That's the attenuation radius. And if we leave that there, I'm going to put a few lights here just to make a thing. You see, now we're getting these red X's. Red X means that's not going to compile when you run the game. That's bad. It works fine for if you're doing demo shots out of the actual editor view. But once you go into gameplay, once you publish your game, it's going to give you compiler errors, and you're not going to be able to publish to a store. You'll run into bugs and issues with that. So a few ways to change that. We've got 4 lights here. All of them have intersecting cones. If I take one light and bring it out, all the way out, way out there, way out there, then it is going to eventually lose that overlap box. So now all the way out here, there is no overlap. And get back into it. I got lost, so I'm turning the directional light back on to light up the scene. I am in the walls. And navigate back to the courtyard. Cool. So, oh, I guess I dragged all of them or went to the wrong wall. There it is. So 4 lights that have overlapping cones, bad. Ways to fix that are to spread them out where they don't overlap, and then make sure that the attenuation radius doesn't overlap. So now we were at 1,000. We got the X, that's bad. But if we drop that to 100, the X goes away and you still pretty much have the same coverage there. 100 and 1,000. Maybe lose a little bit. Maybe 500. Or what the actual deal is. The actual number. 200, 150, 120. So maybe I'll pop to that one. 110. Cool. So those are some things to think about with point lights, spotlights, directional lights, and how to optimize those for your scenes. Make sure they're not overlapping. Make sure you still get good coverage. I'm going to do the same thing over here that we did with the point lights and spread them out over the balcony, so we can do a comparison of what a point light and a spotlight look like. Okay. Those lights. Got one more light on here in the outliner. You don't belong. 4. So select all 4, Alt, click, drag down, Alt, click, drag up, Alt, click, and drag up. Cool. And make a folder out of this. We're looking a little more real on this, and show that spotlights wall versus point lights wall, right? You saw the point lights, you go, wow, this is really cool. We got a lot going on here. But that's because we didn't know about spotlights. You put them together, you're starting to see like you can get an up and you can get a down at the same time, create some cool effects that way. That's a sneak peek for later. Cool. So I'll turn off the points. We'll go with spots only. We've got them all around here. And I'm going to grab that entire folder and bring it to the other side as well. So we have the entire atrium area lit up. It makes a huge difference. So, yeah. Now we're looking at these. They're at 8. What's 1 do? More dim. I did kind of like 8. Cool. Within the spotlight, we have the ability to create patterns within that light. And this is going to be this called the IES texture. And I'm going to go to another screen here to show you guys. You can pick out your own patterns here. In theatrical lighting, we call these gobos. And there are a few different manufacturers of these. I'm going to navigate us to the Apollo website here. Post it in the chat. So go to this website. You're going to see circles. I'll stop share and I will go over to the other screen. New share here. Great. So this is Apollo Design's website. On here, you're going to see a bunch of different black and white patterns. This one's red. And just pick one out that you think looks cool. I'm going to go with Almost Paisley. Click on it and save image as ME4226. Stick it on the desktop. And go to Unreal. We're going to go to Meshes. And actually, I'm going to create a new one. Oop. Forgot to bounce back to the other screen. Sorry. So you have that downloaded, whichever one you think's cool. There we go. So I created this new folder. Show you. Right click in that control space content bar and go new folder, textures. And we are going to import that texture, ME4226, into here. Now I want this pretty big on here, so I'm actually going to make another spotlight and point it down towards the ground, kind of in the center. And IES texture. I'm going to go here. And I'm sorry, it's light function material. You can't add it because it's a texture. So you're going to go create material. And now when you add it, it's supposed to do the cool thing. Spotlight. Interesting. Cool, Jesse. So double click on here. Nothing happened. What's up with that? We're going to go in and we're going to go to the blend mode. It says opaque. And we're going to go to masked. No, sorry. That's the fine one. Material domain, light function. Apply. Pairing shaders. Praying. And nothing. Because this is not hooked up. There. And again, apply. And there it is. Ta-da! Right? And I wonder if it's going to support when we turn everything back on, and it stays. Wow. So there's a bit of a sidestep there. Did I lose anybody? Looks like Michael's got it. Right? So in theatrical lighting, this is a gobo pattern. And so we got our down lights on the walls. We got our gobo pattern in the center here. And same thing, we're just going to alt click, drag those around, and fill out this floor so it's covered with this groovy, almost paisley is what I picked. But yours will be different. Now, with the texture, you're going to notice a lot more about how light functions if I turn it. You get this keystoning effect where near the light source, it's going to be tight. As it goes out, it's going to expand. You also can notice it's super bright down here. And as it goes out, it gets dimmer. In plan view, you can see straight down, you got the full circle, even coverage. That's not always achievable within your level to avoid these X's, these overlaps. So as you design, think about angling, how you can get them all in there, adjusting attenuation, radius, all of those things. Maybe you only want that bright part within your scene to be lit up. And maybe you want it to be not as in focus. I'm supposed to do it. Yeah. So that's lighting. Those are some cool things. Gobos, downlights, point lights. There is another type of light here called a react light. And where these lights have this cone to them, a react light is going to be like these lights, a rectangle. So add react light, and that's essentially an illuminated rectangle. You can see the outline there, trying to get to a good spot, and I'm in the walls I don't want to be. I want to be down here in our unfilled out for now learning future space. So with this, you can see, that's a good enough angle, the hard line on the wall there. As you go up and down, you can change that with the barn door angle. And if you want to change the size of the light, you can bring it more narrow, bring it less high, so you got more of a square. The lights in our room are skinny and narrow with a pretty okay barn door angle. The barn door angle is going to prevent some overlap, allow you to better define those things. If you, let's say, you have a door and you want to create that scene with very low lighting, you can make a skinny thing that goes here and down lights, fill in the rest on the sides. So there's hard edge, rectangle light, react light is what that's called. And we'll get more into that when we go into the interior space of what we have here in the next scene. Little bit of color theory. So these are our gobo patterns that we have. We got this question? Yeah. Yep. Boom.
assuming you think it accurately creates all the lighting sources, but we have a bunch of that show.
Yes. There is a bake function in Unreal Engine, which to this point, I have told everybody, do not click this button. Your computer will be locked up. But that's here in the build submenu, and you can click build and select lighting. I'm not going to click up there because it might freeze up this whole tutorial. But maybe at the end, I will circle back around and show you baking in that lighting so that it doesn't matter if there's overlap. It'll just be baked into the texture that's on those models. Run it real time. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And I'm actually going to check here. This might be another solution. Yes, it is. So there's 3 different types of mobility of lights within Unreal. By default, it's stationary, which means you can change the color through blueprint scripting. And I guess for the recording, question is about whether you can bake one set of lights and leave the other set open and movable. And so here in the transform menu of the details, we have mobility. Stationary by default, but watch the X's whenever I hit static. Those go away on the ones I was selecting. This one was not selected in the hierarchy, so that's why it didn't go away. And that's a way to do it. It's less taxing to have static lights than stationary lights. Stationary reserves parameters that allow you to program color changes. The final type there is movable. And movable allows you to control the vectors within gameplay of pitch, yaw, direction. Yep. But it got rid of it in the opposite direction. It got rid of it because when you build that scene, now it's going to consider every single variable. So your build time, low, middle, high. We use movable lights a lot in production for like moving heads. Of course, moving lights for moving lights. Cool. There was another lighting thing here. I'm going to turn this attenuation radius back up and see if I can get where it says preview. Interesting. It's not doing it now. This happens to me a lot though, where you'll end up with it saying preview, 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 where you have multiple lights overlapping. And if you're just looking to do a screenshot out of the editor, switching it to movable would get rid of those preview marks. But it doesn't seem to have enough damage to the GPU going on right now with this model to account for those. You can see up here as well, when I select between those 3, if I click static, you're going to get this message, lighting needs to be rebuilt. And you guys see that all over the place. I know with our AS Universe model right now, that pops up still because we have some lights and we did not build the lighting because I told everyone don't do that yet. Probably due for a build on it, but that pops up. If you are doing a screen share here like I am on Zoom, you know you're going to be in static and you don't want that to pop up anymore. You got to hit this tilde button or next to the 1, the like backwards asterisk, and then disable all screen messages. Then it goes away. So that's a way to like sidestep building out lighting. If you're just doing this for previs, if you're just doing this to get a concept across. Did that answer the original question at some point in that? Yes. Okay, cool. That means it would need to be built and baked. Otherwise, you're going to get the message in your build out of the whole project. Okay. Mm-hmm. Correct. That's the trade-off of baking, as well as like the actual time your computer is stuck processing the bake. The other is, as Shyam pointed out, you're not going to get shadows on a baked light. At that point, it's not light anymore. It's part of the texture. So that does bring us to another type of light that I haven't talked about yet. So I'll close out of the spotlights on the wall. And wow, that's pretty pretty. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. That's a nice little texture there. But the other type of light is emissive. So let me see here. How could I show emissive light? Aha! I have a thing in here. Content, meshes, props, rolling TV cart. I'm going to put a TV cart in here. Ta-da! TV on wheels. How cool. Turn off the spots. And we're going to go here. It says emissive. It is not emissive, but it should be. Base color is black. We're going to change it to white. Apply. And it's not going to be emissive yet, but it is going to change. It's not emissive because it's plugged into base color and not emissive color. Apply. Boom. So now any texture can also emit that light. You can see there, it's only going that way, not backwards, because we have another plane blocking that light on the backside. A lot of times I notice that comes in really bright. So instead of feeding it the raw color, put in a multiplier and a scalar parameter called emissive strength. And then if that emissive strength is 0, that goes away. But if it's 1, it's full power. So anywhere in between there, you can decide, you know, low dim nighttime screen, full blown. You want the fog and the glare and everything on your cameras. That's a place to play around with that as a material. Cool. Look back at the tutorial here, the outline. Cool. Yes, save that. And we're just going to add a TV. There is actually TVs on those columns, so I'm just going to leave it there for now. In the pit. And that is actually too bright right now, so I don't want that. I said I'd leave it alone, but here I am. apply, and close. One final element on here in lighting that I want to talk about that I have on my list is fog. So sometimes you want to be able to see like rays from the sun or just patterns, beam patterns. So to add that in, we're going to go to Visual Effects, Experiential Height Fog. Add that in. Then increase the density. And it has to have some color. And these need to be set to cast shadows. Cast shadow effects world. Interesting. Interesting. Well, that didn't do what I thought it would, but it does add another layer of stuff going on there. Okay. We've done all of this stuff so far just in black box. At the beginning, we turned off that dynamic sky. When we turn that back on, just note what happens with the ambient light in here. You got a much softer glow now. Everything is softer. And I really should have remembered how that looks on the Zoom call. So now outside it's super light, but inside, I'm going to scroll into the rolling cart by hitting F. We're pretty dark. There's no real windows coming in. We got some ambient light seeping through here, which is why it's different than when it's off. Super sharp stuff, super dramatic. When there's some light coming in, it's a little more realistic. Cool. At this point, I want to hop over to the other scene in here. So control space, content, levels. We've been in lighting tutorial, and now I want to go over to the LF interior. Before you do that, hit save. Click on this. Don't click on this. Hit save. And then LF interior. These are the texture changes we made. We turned the emissive into its glowing self. We brought in a new asset, which was that gobo texture from Apollo, and we turned that texture into a material. So those are the three changes. We do want those saved. And now it's going to start loading that LF interior space, which should look pretty familiar to us aside from this divider now. I put in some twin motion people. This twin motion is, it's kind of like Unreal Light. There's no programmability, but you can still do visualization with it. And they're both now owned by Epic Games. So Epic Games maintains their library as free assets on the marketplace. These posed humans were at one point a free asset. Every month at the beginning of the month, they launch out like 4 or 5 or 6 free assets. If you're really looking to get into game design and looking to get into using Unreal specifically, building up that library is pretty key. It gives you something new to work with every month as you're learning. And then if you've been doing this for like 5 years, then you end up with 200 asset packs of everything you could possibly imagine, from dynamic skies to dragons to, cyberpunk stuff, to real architectural visualization, real world things. Yeah. In here, hit G again. You can see how I laid this out for our digital twin. A series of React lights that match what we have going on in emissive texture on color M00. And there's no crossbars on these because I selected movable, which is kind of bad practice in real life. On static, it still works, so should leave there. Cool. Within here, I was going to show the camera stuff. We can either do it in here or we can go back to the other scene that we've been playing around with. This one's already set up. So cool. We'll just stay here. This is the standard lighting that we have within this space. But I did add some uplights like we talked about in the last section here. So you turn the ceiling light off, you're going to get a more dramatic effect. If we wanted to bring in some of those gobo patterns, drop them over the furniture, that's kind of a cool look. I do want to do that before we get started on the other stuff. Just there's some interesting element. And light function. Got the zoom stuff over here. I think I called it ME. There it is. So check out when it goes over furniture. How freaky cool that makes it, right? Like that is some serious lighting stuff going on. As you think about designing levels and layering stuff in, and just really consider what a gobo pattern wash over a lounge or single elements can do to a scene. Put one there, put one over the other. Maybe one day we'll get a budget enough that we can actually bring in the theatrical fixtures and we'll do up this space right, just like we design here. And I got those two selected. I actually want to change the color on this to a blue. So we got that blue and gold. Here at Arizona State, we're red and gold. So we can go like a red. Yeah. A lot of stuff you can do as far as changing around the lights to make cool scenes. Spotlights, I had those out at 90. We bring that to 26. You're going to get like pin spotty stuff going on. Okay. And 26 is an actual uplights pattern. So I'm going to leave this here. Maybe one more pattern wash on that back seat, back lounge area. Just to be consistent. And there's nothing coming out of this. So I'm going to go to that texture and guess I'll just break that off for now. Cool. So I think we're ready for cinematography now. Everyone's good. I think we're at like 4 o'clock. Yeah. Does anyone need a break to come back or just power through? I know a lot of people need to leave early. Cool. So in this same ad folder, if you come down to Cinematic and then Cinema, Camera, Actor, and drag that in, come over to the scene, the outliner on the right, then right click on what you just placed and hit Pilot, Cine, Camera, Actor 3. This is what you'll see. It is at ground level and everything. You kind of have to look around, get your bearings, use your navigation. If you notice, like you zoom around real quick, using your scroll wheel will get you back into a good spot. Follow the light, and we're back in. So one of the first things you'll notice is the focal length as opposed to the full scene looks like this, right? That's what you're natively working in all the time. But if you pilot your cine camera, you have a lot more control over how you're seeing, how you're viewing your scene. If you're at a 9 or an 8, that's kind of how a human eye is going to see it. If you're at a 35, that's like a super zoom. That's like a standard zoom lens. But if you want to get real deep, you can go as far up as you want. I like to stay probably about a 15 is good for photos. And then 11 is sort of pushing straight lines, right? You get, I said 8 earlier, but you're going to get distortion around the edge. The human eye sees that distortion, so it mimics that here. With about a 15. This dude, I kind of want him to be a little more in the light instead of moving the light. I'm going to move him. Cool. Once you get your scene picked out, yeah, there was something I should talk about. Detail panel went blank. And when I'm navigating my camera, I like to lock that in. So if I click out of the scene, the control panel stays there. By default, it's going to set you at 16:9, but there are tons of different options on here that match actual real world cameras. Super 35, Super 16, full frame DSLR. So if you set these to be the exact, sensor size of your camera, you can actually use this on a digital twin of a space to pre-pick out your pictures. Like what angles do you want to get of Dr. Crow coming into the learning futures? Where do you want him to stand? Where do you want the picture with the cool background? Do you want to repeat Jim's profile picture with the halo lights? That gives you a lot of control over that. We are in 16:9 though. And if you want to change that, just change the width. This says 13.5 and 24. So if you want an Instagram post, 13.5. Now you've got your square. You're going to have to move your focal length out if you want the same shot. And if you want for your phone, for your TikTok Reels, you do 13.5 by 24. And now you've got full on display here. This is also good if you're designing a mobile game. You could set your character camera using these settings down here to give you a more realistic walkthrough. But there are so many features that you can just dive into that I'm not going to be able to speak to, but you can get into everything: bloom, exposure, lens flares, color grading. You know, they really do use this on Star Wars, like top of the line A-list production uses these tools to get the shots that we love. Aperture, how much of it's in focus? 2.8 is normal. Yeah, so now you've kind of got your thing. You want to share it out. I want to add another light back here for the composition. Maybe it's going to be, just felt like that wall was blank, right? And once you have your shot picked out, it's like, oh, I zoomed out too much. If you hit this stop piloting button, that saves the camera position. So you can always go back in there. You're like, oh, I noticed this area was dark. So you can move your light into place in a more natural way. And I want to put that still locked over here. Window details, details 2. Just dock it right next to it. So now you still have that camera locked, but you can also edit this thing. I want to put my texture material onto this back wall as well. Light function material. Okay. I think that'll get it. Go back to your camera 3. Pilot. Cool. And we want to grab this picture so you can share it, show the cool stuff you've been making. And to do that, pretty simple for a picture. These 3 bars in the top left corner. High resolution screenshot. And save. Yep, saved. Capture. In the bottom right corner, kind of flashed. It gives you the position that is, the folder that's stored in, and that spits it out as an image. And I'll share that image. Just to show that it does. Show all windows. High res screenshot. Share. Boom. So now that is stored on your computer forever. And once it's out of there, you can take that into, Adobe Photoshop, into Lightroom, adjust those settings even more, and get something really groovy. Or notice this is the wrong angle. Go back to the other scene and repeat until you have what you want. Like, oh, I didn't like that angle. Then you can change it. Really get in on this person that's not that much in on. Yeah. Look around. Pick out your shots. I think this would be cool if we turn these lights back on. Which was in this material. Linking it back up to the emissive color and applying. You see that also adds ambient light in here. And if we remember the multiply function to allow us to adjust brightness, do like a 0.1, see if that helps. Yeah, that's nice. Soft. And do another capture here. Do another change this color to blue. Capture there again. Change the uplights to like that color. I like this color scheme a lot. Capture. And what else? Now, because those three were in the same spot, when we go to the file location where that was stored, sorry, I'm navigating to share here. Now you can compare different lighting schemes within your game using the exact same camera location, the exact same picture, only the lighting is changing to whether you want this to be like a cool vibe or like a dark vibe, something like elegant, just to set up your color schemes that way. Using this high-res screenshot is a great way to pick out lighting for your event, for your game. It's like what, 4:30? 4 on the dot. Okay. Cool. Still got some time if you want to see like animation stuff. Okay. So I'll close out of this high-res screenshot. And let's do it. Let's come down here, control space. We're going to add a new folder, SEQ, which stands for sequence. And then at the top here, this has the clicker. You're going to go add level sequence to SEQ, new level sequence, 001, 001. This should look familiar to anyone doing animation. Got your scrub bar down here. We're going to add a new camera to track. If you want to track something we've already added, that other scene that we made, you hit track actor to sequence. If you want to just straight up create a new camera and set that as the current thing, then you can click here. Going to go back. This identifies that it is within the outliner part of the sequence, new level sequence 01. So you can look up here to make sure you're selected the right one and you're editing the right focal lengths before you actually do it. There. I say before I do that because it's actually over here. Sorry. So somewhere around here. And we will frame in the transform, add a keyframe. We're going to keyframe the focal length. And then we're going to scrub through to the end. Here it says 150. And we're going to pick a new position. And maybe right here, it'll be a slow one. Same thing, transform and focal length. Now when we hit space, zoom, nice little dolly effect. I thought that was super quick, so maybe set it to 600. And if you click in that top bar, it changes the frame. If you drag the red over, that sets the new end frame. I want to drag that all the way out to 600. Oh, there's another thing. Control and scroll within that window. Makes everything smaller. Click on the top camera cut and extend that out so it's calling that camera the whole time. And select the keyframes we just made and drag those to the end as well. Now when we do it, much slower, right? So this is like beginning of the game. You've got this in the background. This is the level that you're going to run through. Boom. And then you want another camera cut. So then you click another camera and add that in. It was a little long on that. 420 frame, 421. New camera. And that cut. Where did it go? And add a new camera 2. So now on the second camera, it added it down here. I want to pick a different angle to go from. Lock the camera. And let's go from the other direction. How about these cool couches that we haven't talked about yet? And maybe back at 10, which is the same. Go here. And frame, scroll to the end, pick another spot here-ish. Frame, oops. And transform. So now that does there. Might be a little quick. Again. So drag those out. Drag this out. And now we should have, if we're locked to the viewport, we should have 2 cameras going. One for this first section. And one for that second section. Still a little quick. Yeah. And doesn't have to just be cameras that you track within a sequencer. We can also do a group of uplights. That group actor. Sorry, no all. You can also track all of the lighting. And so you could change the color as you go through, keyframe different colors and have that animate as well. Here's the one I just put in here. This one, that's the one I want to track. Spotlight 17. So it started 0 and frame it. Go a few, turn it on and frame it. Frame the color as well. Then go a little bit further, change that color, frame it, and then change that color again and frame it. So now it comes on. It changes color and continues on to another color. So that's a lot that you can do with your scenes. Once you have that picked out, this button here, render movie scene capture legacy, click on that. This is where you'll set your settings. You can either do a series of PNGs or AVI. AVI is supported within Premiere Pro, which is what I use for post-processing. 720 probably for the first few renders, just to make sure that's actually the scene you want before you bump into 4K. And sure, we'll use compression. Define where you want it to save. And capture movie, save. Then you can see it real time load in. One thing that I'm immediately noticing, and this is why we do it in 720 first, is that within our viewport, it's dark, but in the render, it's light. And the reason that's happening, now that saves to the file. The reason that's happening is we have this whole folder is hidden, but that's not the only setting you have to check. If you want it to not show up in the render, then in the details panel, it needs to be set to actor hidden in game. That way it doesn't pop up. Now, when we render again, it stays dark. Cool. I think that's all I have on here. Does anyone have questions or like stuff you want to see in Unreal that's either elaborate on something we've already done or go into something different? Yeah. This book is Light, the Visible Spectrum and Beyond, by Kimberly Arcand and Megan Watsky. It is my favorite lighting book because it has all these pretty pictures, talks about what light is, color temperature, the science of it, the wavelengths of it, the element of it. But yeah, I love that book. Mhm. Yeah. Yes. So the comment was on hardware and how if you don't have the hardware to support this, and you're locked into a camera perspective, if you move forward, it's going to take a minute for it to make that small adjustment. So if you are really trying to do heavy workloads on lighting, it's important that you have a graphics card that can handle that, something with ray tracing. Something that might help solve that, won't solve it completely, but is that first thing we talked about, the Control R, where we turn on and off the real time. real time off. Cool. Is there any other questions? The question is on my workflow for picking out lights, and whether I bake lights or toggle the ungroup that, toggle the options static, stationary, and movable. When I work for my specific field in events, this is going to be a different answer than game design. I generally do all my work within the editor. I never have to export out, never have to build the game, never have to build the scene, and just switch every light to movable. But if I'm designing for a game, then I will take into consideration some lights need to be static, some lights need to be stationary, and some need to be movable, just by application that I'm trying to fill within that simulated environment. And as well as designing for accessibility. I like to have a scene pretty well laid out before I bake, because it stores those textures from that point on. One of the reasons I haven't baked with digital twin, for example, is not all the buildings are in. So I don't want to bake the sky texture onto it and then have some of the buildings half baked and some of them full baked. You can change the time of day, because it considers all the variables of the light that you are baking. And that's a good question. Uh-oh. I think I just froze the computer. Speaking of performance. Yeah, I'm not sure on that, actually. I don't want to give a recorded, confirmed thing of something that I have no idea about. I'll do some research on it. Yeah. You can or can't. Yeah, a little bit of both. The question is about, when I design events, do I put the light where it is in Unreal, or do I do Unreal based off of where the lights are? And so any ambient light that exists in that venue, if it's an outdoor venue, then I'm going to turn on the sky, and I'm going to design with that, whether it's at nighttime or, evening time. But if it's inside, like we were doing at the beginning of the tutorial in the atrium space, then I'm going to try to think about what's actually possible. Like, is it possible to have a light that's just dangling in the middle of the atrium like we were doing in the tutorial? We probably can't do that. You bring in extra truss, extra labor, all that just adds cost. But if you were to put those coming from the balconies, you can put a light fixture on a balcony and then have that shoot down. So I try to think about what's actually possible if the intent is to recreate it in the real world. And then based on where those are, you can either export that out as an FBX, like the actual actors. So you get empty actors that come into the venue scene that you've modeled, and then point those out that way, plot them on the actual floor plan. Yeah. So with that, with the event stuff, it's really key that you get it. You don't want to oversell. You don't want to promise that it's going to look exact, like no ambient light, and you don't want to sell big gobo washes in full sun, because that's just not going to show up. So you want to try to simulate the actual lighting in that room as much as possible. You want to have the react lights on the halo thing that's in the learning future space. You want to have those on if they're going to be on during the event. So it plays really well with digital twinning because it's the same goal, make it look as real as possible. And then when you're designing with Unreal Engine, it's take what exists, take what that looks like, and then design how it can look better or different, or to fit a certain aesthetic. The question is on virtual production and how that workflow exists within the editor and is never baked out into a executable file, and whether we need to consider overlapping lights and the other compiler errors that would appear within lighting. And the answer is yes and no, because you still want to consider performance, but most of the time those machines are the top of the line enterprise machines that can render out overlapping lights for sure. You're really only going to get into that with hundreds of lights. The question is, within Hollywood productions, Love, Death, and Robots, Mandalorian, the big stuff, are they working within the viewport, or are they working within sequencer, or are they working within gameplay mode? And you're not going to like the answer, but it depends, right? And probably a combination of all of them. That same section where you'll pick out your camera movement within sequencer, but then exit out of the sequencer and say, oh, there's a dark spot here. Exit out of the sequencer, go back into viewport and fill in that light. Or we should really have a tree here, put the tree in. But at some point, you're going to want to define the actual shots that you're designing for, put the heavy content within that viewport, and not waste triangles in the background. Which I guess is another like level design best practice, is to, like, if the scene is indoors, don't include the exterior in that level build. Or if it's an exterior scene, have the interiors be separate levels that you teleport to, just to keep level sizes small, so it's only maintaining certain amounts of memory. Yeah. Cool. If you want to take a video out, sequence is the way to go, or like OBS or XSplit on top of Unreal. Not that I know of. You can, within a sequencer, set record motion. So if you're piloting a camera, you can say record the motion for the next bit and pilot around. Yeah. That gives you more fluid stuff instead of keyframe, keyframe, keyframe. Cool. I think that's all we got, Olivia.
Thanks, Jesse. And thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through that step by step. I know that we were really looking forward to a deep dive into Unreal, and I think we got it. So thank you so much. I am just going to share my screen really quickly, but I just want everybody to be able to save the date for this upcoming P2P that we have with Harmanpreet Kaur Bains, which will be focused on Instagram and creating Snap AR filters. Here at Learning Futures, we've never really played with AR filters, and I think the time is now to do it. So save the date. That will be Thursday, October 13th at 3 p.m. Also a hybrid endeavor. So if you'd like to join us on Zoom or in person at the LFC, both options are available. And again, I just want to thank Jesse for his time. I want to thank our guests who are here in the studio with us, and I want to thank our viewers who are watching this after the fact. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.